All right, so if you guys don't know me, my name is Josh. I'm around here quite a bit, so you probably know me and my wife. I don't know if she's in the room right now. It's really dark out there. Yeah, she is, Jocelyn. We help out here, and we also help with the young adult ministry here at Living Word. So if you are a young adult, or if you are a senior right now, we are officially inviting seniors to come be a part of Young Adult Nights. The next official one is next Thursday at our house, but tomorrow, we're actually just going to go out to Perkins tomorrow night at 7. So if you're a senior and you want to come, feel free to come hang out at Perkins with us. I am also a world-famous author. I'm just kidding. I mean, I know who I am. You guys know who I am. So I'm pretty sure I got fans. Maybe there's people online. If you're watching online right now, Jack's a fan, but he's local. I'm saying like international. Do I have fans? If there's anybody watching online from another country, please click and say that you're a fan of my book. Even if you're not, just say you're a fan, because I'll feel better if I'm, then I can say that I have international fans. All right, but as part of my contract, I do give away one book every time I speak. It's not a real contract, but Dustin's not here, so Pastor Dustin's not here, so he can't say anything. I think Pastor Ryan is in the building, though, so he's out there. He won't even know. So I can give a plug for my book. It's called Everything I Know I Learned from Sports. I wrote this a couple years ago. I know Jack's a fan. I know he has a copy. So he's not eligible to win because he already has one. But it's a book. It's everything. It's a daily devotional, 366 days, because I wrote it during a leap year. And it's one Bible verse and one sports metaphor, something that God showed me. I say on the back here, a lot of us struggle to hear God's voice because we think it needs to be a struggle. But God created you. He knows your language and how to best speak to you. For me, it's sports. I'll be watching a game. A play will happen, and God will say, I work like that sometimes. And when he was saying that, I'd write it down and then ended up with a bunch of them. And actually, I have more, so there'll probably be a second edition coming out at some point. I don't know. But I want to give away a copy. So how many sports fans do we have? I know it's not a huge thing. Okay, I saw that hand in the back. You got, like, hair in your eyes. Yeah, you can have this copy if you can answer this trivia question. Who is the lowest seed to ever advance to the Elite Eight in the March Madness tournament? It just happened. I'm going to give it to you anyways. Anyone can give me an answer? Not Jack, because I know you know. Yes, I think my wife just told you, but you can come get this book anyways. Yeah, come down. What do you have? I'm going to preach at this side of the room. There you go. Yep. And if you want me to sign it later, it can be worth even more money than it is now, which probably isn't that much, but still. Okay, so I've spoke a few different times here. If you guys go to Maranatha, I've spoke at chapel a few times. And what I try to do, so I just said God speaks to me through sports, right? I understand sports. It's usually the way that I communicate. It's the way that me and God talk. But I try to not go too sports heavy when I'm in a room like this, because there's a lot of different people, and a 30 you maybe raised your hands that said you were a sports fan. So I try to not go too heavy into the sports. But today, I'm going to lean in, and I'm going to talk about what I know. And actually, that book, day number 3, is actually what I'm going to talk about today. So if you want to get the book, you can buy it on Amazon anywhere. Again, Josh Coan, Everything I Know I Learned from Sports. But I'm going to lean into sports because, and if you're not a sports fan, this isn't going to go over your head. I think you'll still get it. You might have to pay attention a little bit more because this will apply to you, and there's definitely like a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with sports really. But specifically to the sports fans, I want to talk to you. So don't check out if you're not a sports fan. Actually listen even more so, because it might be a little more harder to get out of. It's not going to be that hard. I'm going to make it pretty simple. If you don't know me, one thing about me is I like to make things very simple, very practical, very easy to understand, apply to your life kind of stuff. So that's what today will be as well. So I'm going to lean into sports, and I'm going to talk about 20 years ago. So we're coming up on the anniversary of arguably the greatest press conference in the history of sports. Okay? 20 years ago, Allen Iverson, how many of you guys know Allen Iverson? A couple of you guys. If you don't, your parents probably do, right? He was the MVP of the league in 2001. It's the jersey I'm wearing, Sixers. not a Sixers fan, but Iverson was best handles I've ever seen, absolutely changed the game. His crossover is still the best crossover I've ever seen. Changed the game, not just with his handles, but with the culture of the NBA. He absolutely, one of the icons in the league. But 20 years ago, he skipped a practice during the playoffs, by the way, and afterward, there was a press conference, and the media was asking him about the skipped practice. I don't remember why he skipped it. Don't really know. Not that important. In this press conference, he gave a legendary, I think it was like a 10-minute press conference. He said practice 22 times, said the word practice. You're saying practice? Practice? We're talking about practice? He said, I'm supposed to be the franchise player, and we're sitting here talking about practice. Not a game, mind you, practice. Okay? So obviously he was visibly agitated. If you haven't seen it yet, look it up. It's hilarious. It was also, while you're looking up Allen Iverson, look up some of his highlights. We were just talking about with Brandon about when he was a rookie and crossed over Jordan, and it was like one of the most iconic plays ever, and he was a rookie, and he crossed out the GOAT. Anyway, side note. So Allen Iverson didn't want to talk about practice. He was annoyed because he didn't want to talk about practice. He's like, I'm a franchise player. We can talk about games, but don't talk to me about practice. I actually want to talk to you guys about practice today, okay? So we're going to talk about practice. When I think of practice, I think of sports, right? Playing sports as a kid. I played soccer and basketball when I was at Maranatha. That's what I think when I think of practice, is going to practice to play this sport. But since a lot of you, said you weren't sports fans, maybe you didn't play sports as a kid, whatever you do now, I want you to think about that as practice. So maybe it's singing, playing an instrument, right? These people up here they're very extremely talented. God bless them with some ability, obviously. But there's some practice involved too, right, Jack? There's some practice. No? Jack's just that good. But the rest of them all practice very hard to get that good. Jack was just born with it. He's the exception. You don't even have to listen today then. You can tune out. You can fall asleep, whatever. This one's not for you then because you already got it. For the rest of us, right, practice is important. So maybe it is sports. Maybe it's a musical instrument. Maybe it's video games. I was actually just talking to Jeremiah before service today about he actually competed in some gaming tournaments and actually won some money, not a lot of money, but won some money playing video games. And he was talking about how much you have to practice to get that good. I mean, there are people that make literally millions of dollars playing video games. Don't tell your parents that was like the message of today. The point is to go play a bunch of video games. But if you're gonna be good at something, you have to practice, right? I found this randomly in the conference room. So if any of you guys are looking for this, I'll give it back after service. But this is it's a picture of somebody stacking cups, and it has a list of practice drills to stack cups. So it's literally like, even if stacking cups is what you do, you apparently need to practice to get really good at stacking cups. Apparently that's a thing. So I'm curious though to what do you guys practice? So not you, but the rest of you, maybe music is the thing that you practice. What sports? What else do you guys practice? Anybody, shout it out. Tell me what you practice. Maybe it's memorizing scriptures. That's a great thing to practice. Don't steal my sermon though, Jack. Anybody else? What do you practice? Michael's about to say something. Drawing, right? If you're an artist or you're a writer, it doesn't just happen overnight. That takes practice to get better at it. Art for sure, like drawing, painting, something that you practice. Photography, Mike, I thought of you when we were talking about photography, like taking pictures, something you practice. Most people don't just pick up a camera and take amazing pictures. Like if you want to get good at it, it definitely takes practice. So what I want you to do is whenever I say the word practice, and I'm gonna try to beat Allen Iverson's 22 times, only mine's gonna be about a half an hour, so it's gonna sound more natural. But whenever I say practice, if it's a sport that you play, think that. If it's a musical instrument, think that. If it's art or writing or whatever it is, I want you to think that when you think practice. See, this applies to everybody, not just sports, right? So I want you to think of that as practice. So when I say practice, you think of that. What I'm gonna say today is that church is practice. And what I mean by that, it's practice, it's not the game. So I think a lot of us, when we think of church, we think of like, that's game day as a Christian, right? Like church, we get all amped up for church. That's like, we think that's the most important thing we do as Christians. But church is just practice. And I don't mean that to discourage church. I'm glad you're here. Please come back. It's great, right? But it is practice. It's not the game. So I'm gonna give you 5 reasons why church is like practice, okay? And again, sports practice, music, art, whatever it is that you practice, right? Maybe it's school, maybe it's kind of homework, classwork, like that's a form of practice, right? You study, learn, get smarter so you can pass the test, right? So, 5 reasons why church is like practice. The first reason is you should be at practice. You should be at church. You should be at practice. That's the number one reason, right? Hebrews 10:25 is the first verse I gave them. You guys are probably more familiar with it in the New King James. That's the one I haven't memorized in, right? Do not forsake the assembly of ourselves together. But that's really kind of a confusing, churchy way to kind of say it. But just plain and simple in the NIV, it says, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another. So, in case you're wondering, the Bible says, go to church. It's a good thing. You guys are here. You guys got that box checked. Good job for coming to church. But you should be at church just like you should be at practice. Second reason that church is like practice is that's where you learn to play. A big thing for me is under the understanding you don't come to church with everything figured out. We are all broken people, and I've heard a lot of different people use the expression, I gotta clean myself up before I go to God, before I come to church. You don't do that. You don't say, oh, let me get really good at dribbling and shooting, and then I'll go to practice. No, you go to practice to get better at that, to learn how to do that. A few years ago, well, it's 6-7 years ago, my nephew was 10 years old, and I was an assistant coach for my brother was the coach of the basketball team. 10-year-old boys. Some of them were pretty good. Some of them were not at all. And they showed up to practice basically not knowing how to play basketball. And it was my job as a coach to show them the game. So they come to learn to play the game. You come to church not because you have it all figured out, not because your life is so clean, not because it's so great, but because you know you need help, right? That's why you come to practice. That's why you come to church. And when I say that, I'm not just talking to the youth. I'm talking about myself. I'm talking about the other leaders in the room. I'm talking about Pastor Dustin, Pastor Ryan, the pastors that are here, the leaders that are here. We come to church not because we have it all figured out, but because we know we need help. And that's why we're here. Church is not a place full of perfect people. It's a place where broken people come to get fixed, right? And not by me, but by God. Not by anyone up on stage, but by God. That's why we come to church. Practice is where you learn to play the game. So if you think of church as perfect people, then throw that out right now. Whether you think about yourself as a perfect person, sorry, Jack, or anybody else. Sorry, there's 2 Jacks here that I realized well, that can apply to both of you. You're talking about, oh, I got all these scriptures memorized. Good for you. I mean, that's good. I'm happy for you. But you still need to come to church too, even though you got the whole Bible memorized, Jack. And even though you can play so well without even practicing, you guys still need to practice. You still need to come to church. All right? Practice is, okay, this one's for you guys. This is for the Jacks. Practice is where you get better. That's number 3. Even if you are great, you still should practice to get better. Right? Allen Iverson says, I'm the franchise player. He won the MVP of the league the year before. Didn't think he needed practice, I guess. He still needed practice. No matter how good, as good as I think Allen Iverson was, he still needed practice. Michael Jordan went to practice. LeBron James, your boy, goes to practice, right? They probably need to practice a little bit more in LA, but that's a different story. Steph Curry goes to practice. In fact, that's why he's so good at shooting, is because he's practiced shooting so many times, all right? All right, I do want to give a little story about my favorite basketball player ever, Kevin Garnett. Carried the Timberwolves for over 10 years, got traded to Boston to win his championship. When he was in Boston, so he's like 15, 16 years in the league, aging guy, and Doc Rivers was the coach at the time, and he was trying to get KG to chill out in practice. If you guys know anything about KG, the first thing you need to know is that he went hard, everything he did. Practice, games, didn't matter. And Doc Rivers was trying to get him to calm down a little bit, and he wouldn't calm down. He was practicing at full game speed, and Doc's like, you're old, you can't be doing that, you need rest, so we need you for the game. So he took him out of the scrimmage they were doing. And so what KG's response was, he was on the sidelines, and he was mimicking, Kendrick Perkins was in for him. He was mimicking everything that Kendrick Perkins was doing, the defensive rotations, everything. He was doing it at full game speed by himself on the sideline. So Doc Rivers had to cancel practice. He was like, I need you to rest, I'm sorry. But Kevin Garnett, as great as he was, former MVP, Hall of Famer, just had his jersey retired in Boston, He needed to practice 16, 17 years in the league. Already won a championship, already won an MVP. Still needed to practice. Still went 100% in practice. I got another story for you. Sorry, all of my favorite athletes are retired. I'm sorry, I'm just at that age right now. I'm older than a lot of guys that are in the league. Almost everybody, not LeBron, he's actually older than me. But everybody else, I'm older than now. I'm okay with that. So some of my sports heroes are, some of them retired before you guys are born, probably. No, not that old. But another sports story that I want to share is from Kobe Bryant. You guys know Kobe, right? Yes? Thank you. Somebody said yes. I don't know who said that, but yes, Kobe Bryant. You all know Kobe. We all loved Kobe, right? All right. Let me get a sip of water real quick. Talk amongst yourself about how great Kobe was. I'll have to get a sip of water. Somebody said basketball, right? Yes, he played basketball. Kobe Bryant played basketball. One of the best to ever do it, Kobe Bryant. All right, so a quick story about Kobe Bryant. All right, so this is a story about a guy. I don't remember his name. He's a writer or something, a reporter of some sort. And he got an opportunity to, back when Kobe was alive, when he was still playing, he got an opportunity to attend one of Kobe's famous 4 a.m. workouts. So one of the things, Kobe Bryant worked out like nobody's business. He was famous for 4 a.m. In fact, the guy said he showed up at 3:45 to try to beat Kobe to the gym. Kobe had already been there for like a half an hour. So he actually was there at like 3:15, like obsessed with the way he worked out. But I love this story about he got an opportunity, and this was back in 2007. Kobe was unquestionably the best player in the league, right? Sorry, LeBron fans. At the time, it was definitely Kobe Bryant. There was no question. I'm gonna pick on you because, and I think she made you say LeBron. Did you say that on your own? Oh, okay. Sorry, I just wanna make sure I have my stories right. I gotta find somebody over here to pick on though, because I got the two Jacks. No, somebody over here. Who over here can I pick on? I can't, it's dark. I can pick on Dominic. Ryan, I can pick on Ryan. Are you a LeBron fan, Ryan? You a LeBron fan? No. You a Kobe fan? You a fan of basketball? Yeah? Who do you like? Kobe? I like Ryan. Ryan's a smart kid. He's got good parents. He's got a good head on his shoulders. Y'all should be more like Ryan. That's my message. Be like Ryan. I'm done. Just kidding. Okay. So this is what he wrote about after he got to go to one of Kobe's famous 4 a.m. workouts. He said, for 45 minutes, I was shocked. For 45 minutes, I watched the best player in the world do the most basic drills. I watched the best player on the planet do basic ball handling drills. I watched the best player on the planet do basic footwork. I watched the best player on the planet do basic offensive moves. Granted, he did it with a surgical precision and superhero intensity, but the stuff he was doing was so basic, I simply couldn't believe it. Later that day, I went over to him. Thanks again, I said. I really enjoyed watching you work out this morning. No problem, Kobe replied. But then I hesitated not to sound rude or worse, condescending. But I said, you're the best player in the world. Why are you doing such basic stuff? Remember, he got up at 4 a.m. to do this, or got there before 4. Kobe flashed that gleaming smile of his. Why do you think I'm the best player in the world? He asked. Because I never got bored with the basics. And I love that story because here was Kobe Bryant, the best player in the world, unquestionably, never got bored with the basics and said, how do you think I became the best player in the world? Never got bored with the basics. So many of us, especially if, like my mindset is always trying to be great, right? If we're trying so hard to be great, we want to change the world, we have big dreams, we have all these things we want to do, but we get bored with the basics. We get bored with practice. We get bored with homework. We get bored with just the little things, the daily reading your Bible, memorizing scriptures, right? I love that about Jack. I was a kid, I grew up in the church. We had Bible, memory verses, and we would get, like candy or like super church bucks. None of you guys are old enough for that, but we would get and they would have you memorize these scriptures. And as you get older, you don't think about that as much maybe, right? Some of you, we get kind of bored with the basics. I grew up in the church. I went to Maranatha. Like, I know enough scripture, right? That's kind of my mindset sometimes. But I love that Jack's like, no, I'm going to keep memorizing scripture. I'm never going to get bored with what some people might consider basics, right? The basics, going to church, going to practice. It might seem basic, right? But you got to get good at the basics. Kobe was so good because he continued to perfect the basics. Okay? Whatever you're trying to do, well, if it is sports, if it is music, if it is build a business, the basics. You can't get bored with the basics. You can't get sick of doing those little things, right? All right, the fourth reason you come to practice is to work with your team, okay? A big reason for practice is to learn how to work with your team, how to play cohesively together. Look, I'll be honest, Jack, you're extremely talented, right? God-given ability, never practice a day in your life. You just get up here and do it. But you still come to rehearsal before service, and you work and you practice, right, with the band to get on the same page. You guys all make sure you know the same songs. You play them together. You get on the same page, right? Even if you are the best in the world, and I'll stop picking on you, Jack, even though you are, without practicing, you still should come work out with your teammates. You still should learn how to play together. And that's just like church, because if you look around this room right now, whether you like anybody else in this room or not, these are the people that God put in your life for this season, and he did it on purpose. So nobody in this room is here by accident, right? Everyone in this room, we're here because we need each other. I need you guys need me. There's something in my life that I need to give to you guys. There's something that you guys have that you need to give to me, and that's true for every single person in this room. We all work together to achieve this common goal that God has for us, and I just think that's so, we lose sight of that sometimes, right? This current series that Pastor Dustin is doing is about relationships. This is why it's so important for people, because God puts these people in your life for a specific reason, for a specific purpose. Nobody's in here by accident. You came to church today for whatever reason. God wanted you here to get something, but also to give something, because you might have something that I need. And if you don't come and bring that, then I might be missing out on something, and God put you in my life for a reason, right? So, side note, I want to challenge all of you in the room. If you don't hear anything else I say, I want to challenge you to two things. Every single time you come to church, I need you to have two goals, okay? One, what can I get at church today? So yes, from the message, from the worship, but from the people around you. What can I get from church, right? I'm assuming if you guys are here, you're here to get something, right? We're not perfect people. We all need this. We all need practice. What can you get? And then the second thing I want you to do is, what can I give today? When you show up on a Wednesday night or a Sunday morning, what can I give? What supply can I give? It's a kind of a churchy word to say the supply that you give, but honestly, you have something that I might need. You have something that the person sitting next to you might need, right? Encouragement. Sometimes it's just a smile. Sometimes somebody's having a bad day and they need someone to tell them, hey, you look nice. I like that shirt you're wearing. Sometimes it's a little thing basic like that. Sometimes it's something bigger. You don't know what people are going through. And sometimes you talking to them, not during church, before and after church, you talking to them can have a huge impact on their life. And I want you to think of that when you come to church. What can I give? And if it is music and you want to be in the band, I'm sure they could always use more people, right? If it is, speaking, you want an opportunity to do an offering message, to do announcements, we will definitely work on those opportunities, but you don't need a microphone to impact the people around you, right? We're all in each other's life for a reason. The fifth reason that church is like practice is because you can try stuff here first, right? You have practice a lot of times to work on the songs, to work on the play, right? No coaches ever, right? Maybe in a movie sometimes, they drop a play on the sidelines and then go out there. Coaches don't put a play into the game plan that they didn't try in practice first, right? They try them in practice first. You see if it can work. You see if you can get the timing down with the players. So you try it first before you can go out into the game and use it. You get shots up in an open gym before you try to cross over Michael Jordan, right? It wasn't the first time Allen Iverson's ever crossed somebody when he crossed Jordan. You run plays first in practice. Jordan's final shot he hit in 1998 to win his sixth championship, last shot he ever took. I say ever. Some say he played for the Wizards. I don't believe it. That last shot he took in the Bulls uniform, the last shot he ever took in the NBA. He was asked about that later, about just the epicness of that shot and like how are you composed and how do you make that shot? And he said, he shrugged it off. He was like, I practice the way I play in the game. So when the game comes, it's nothing new to me. He's like, I've taken that shot thousands of times in an open gym or against my teammate in practice. That shot was nothing new because he had done it so many times in practice. You all know practice makes perfect, right? So I want to encourage you while you're here to practice the things of God in church. So what kind of stuff? Well, hearing from God. It's the number one thing when I talk to other Christians. They're like, how do I hear the voice of God? Practice here, right? What better place to practice hearing the voice of God than during worship, right? You can hear from God. When somebody's speaking, obviously. God can speak through me, through Pastor Dustin, through, when Beverly was preaching. God speaks through the person up here, right? So if you listen and try to get something out of it, he'll speak to you. But also, just in your quiet time here, when you're talking to somebody else, practice hearing God for them or from them, right? Maybe they have something to say. Think a little bit deeper about it. But also, when you talk to somebody in church, again, not during church, before and after, when you talk to somebody, honestly, ask God, what do you want me to say to this person? If you see someone sitting by themselves and you don't know I'm an introvert by nature, right? I know some people don't believe me but we'll go into that another time. I'm an introvert. I don't like going up and talking to people I don't know. But if you say a little prayer in your head, God, what do you want me to say to them? God will give you something to say. And here's the best part about that. This is why church is a great place to practice that, because as long as you say something nice, it's okay. If you say the wrong thing, but it was nice, if you're like, hey, I like your shoes, it's okay. Even if that's not, God didn't really tell me to say that. God actually told me to say I like their hair. It's still okay, right? It's a good place to practice that. Again, it should be something nice. God is not going to tell you to say something mean. But if you say something nice to somebody, it's just a way to practice hearing the voice of God. And you can say it in a pretty safe environment, because if you come up and, I'll give you all permission right now, practice hearing God, see if God has anything to tell me through you after service today. If you say you like my shoes, I will appreciate that a lot. That's probably the only thing in my clothes that I really care about is my shoes. So compliment my shoes. In a different environment, it might come off as weird and creepy. Shoes, probably not as much, but in church, we all know each other, right? We love each other. You can practice hearing the voice of God and speaking and having God speak through you here at church before you have to try to do it outside of these walls, where it can be a lot more intimidating, right? A lot scarier, a lot more distractions, right? Trying to hear the voice of God out in the world. So another thing you can practice here is loving your neighbor. An example of that is complimenting someone's shoes. That's a nice thing to do. Love your neighbor. Practice. That's like one of the number one things, maybe the number one thing we talk about in church, right? Love your neighbor. How do you love people? What does that look like? Well, little plug, if you come back on Sunday, I'm going to talk about that directly. What does it look like to actually love people? So come back on Sunday. But even now, practice just loving people, caring for people. Practice here in the church, again, where it's easier, where there's no pressure, right? We're all in church. This is what practice is for. You practice first so you can use it on game day, right? So if this is practice, here, right now, church is practice, what is the game? Your everyday life is the game. That's why we're here. You practice so you can perform in the game. If you only practice is good, right? I was just talking about how good practice is. But if you only practice and never actually play a game, what's the point, right? I played basketball, Maranatha, when I was younger, right? After my 9th grade year, I stopped playing because I didn't really play that much anyways. I sat the bench every single game, very far on the end of the bench. I wasn't that good. But I still went to practice, and I worked really hard. And after my 9th grade year, I decided I don't want to just practice anymore. If I'm not going to play in the game, then I'm not going to play. Maybe that's a bad attitude. I don't know. I had other things to do. I had homework and friends and church and whatnot. So I stopped playing, because if you only practice and don't play, what's the point? So if you come to church, that's great. Awesome. Just told you how great it is to come to church. But if you go to church, but never take what you learn in church and bring it out into your everyday life, into the game, then what's the point, right? There are people out there, when you leave these doors, there are people out there that need what you have, that need what you get here, right? you guys might not appreciate this yet, but you guys have an amazing church. The worship is fantastic. Like literally, when I was back here, when they were playing, I was like, I don't think people appreciate how good our worship is. Especially like I grew up in this church, so like I've had great worship all my life. You go to other churches, they don't have what we have. Like, let's be honest. We have fantastic worship, we have fantastic preachers, we have the resources that a lot of churches wish they had. There are people that don't get what we get and will never step foot in a church building. You're the only church they're ever going to encounter. So if you don't take what you get here and bring it out there, they're never going to get it. They're never going to hear that. They're never going to get the hope of Jesus Christ. You need to bring church out into your world. You need to be the church in your world, right? If you want to change the world, you got to change your world. So don't look at church as just this, right? You be the church out in the world. That's what we're called to do. We're not called to just sit here on Wednesday night, Sunday morning. We're called to get something here in practice and take it out on game day. That's what real Christianity is. It's not just gathering together, but living it every day of the week. Even if you come every Sunday morning, every Wednesday night, you still have 164 hours in your week. What are you doing with it? And yes, pray, read your Bible. Extremely important. Side note, you should be doing that. If you play a sport or take music lessons or art classes, you know that what you get in practice in class is not the only thing you should be doing. You better be practicing, getting up shots on your own time, otherwise you're not getting any better. Let's be honest. So it's important to read your Bible and pray every day. But beyond that, what are you bringing to the game? What are you bringing? Your game, your world is school, your job if you work, your family, your friends, even strangers checking you out at Target, right? The cashier at Chipotle. How are you bringing church to them? And I realize it might be a short interaction, but what are you doing to bring Jesus into their life, right? Even people you don't like. How can you bring church to people you don't like, right? Are you taking what you learn in church and are you bringing it out to those around you? Are you able to hear the voice of God out there when it really matters, right? I talked about trying to learn to hear God's voice here because it's a lot harder out there, let me tell you. There's a lot of distractions, right? We got a few distractions in here, but not nearly as many as out there, right? The world, people talking, TV, music, whatever it is, like there's a lot of distractions and it's a lot harder to hear God's voice out there. So practice it in here. Again, loving people. The ultimate goal is to love people out there, right? It might be a little bit easier to love people in here. For the most part, we all kind of believe the same thing. We all kind of, to a certain extent, understand the language of Christianity, It's a little bit easier. You're probably going to get a good response if you, in here, go up to somebody and say, hey, just want to let you know God loves you. You'll probably get a good response. Out in the world, you might not, right? Depending on who you talk to. It's harder out there to love people that don't agree with you, that don't believe like you, don't look like you, act like you, talk like you. It's harder, but here you can practice so that you can bring it out there. All right, are you loving people outside of the church? And again, plug for Sunday. I'm going to talk more about that, practically how to love people on Sunday if you guys come back. But really, that's just so important to how to do that. Really, this whole message, everything I've talked about, boils down to James 1:22. And again, you probably are more, I have this verse memorized in the New King James, right? I like to say that's the Bible that Jesus used, right? The New King James. It's a joke. Obviously, would have used the old King James, right? Not the new. A couple people got it. Sorry. I shouldn't try jokes. I shouldn't have tried jokes. I'm sorry. One of those like cheesy preacher jokes that you get to use when you're up here. But James 1:22 in the New King James, it says something like, "Do not be hearers of the word only, but doers also." Which again is kind of a weird phrasing, like the way NIV says it. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Pretty plain and simple, right? Don't just come here and hear a great message, hear some great songs, get prayed over, and then go out and do nothing, right? You're deceiving yourself. You're wasting your time. Go out and do what it says. Practice is very important, but if you don't take the time to take what you learn in practice and apply it to the game, what's the point? Just like church is very important, but if you don't take the time and take what you learn in church and apply it to your everyday life, then what's the point? Why are we even here?